People of Reddit who have killed or hurt someone badly, what is your story? Do you regret it? My childhood was a mess. Single, bipolar mom who was seeing a guy who liked to drink and get physical. I left home at 16 to escape it. One evening I got a call for help from mom, not long after I moved out. TBH, I was trying to cut all contact with family, but I just couldn't do it, so I went over to her apartment. The BF was absolutely stone drunk and raging around the place, breaking shit and yelling. I was trying to get my mom to leave when doucheface walks up and pushes her hard against the wall. Her back hit the wall so hard pictures fell, so I punched him in the face. It's kind of relevant that I was playing football at the time and was 6'1", 220 pounds, so it wasn't a light tap. He was 6'4" and lanky from years of drinking and malnutrition. Anyway, he was unfazed, like it didn't even register he was so drunk, and he kept raging and went for my mom again. I body checked him, shoulder in front of the flight of stairs leading down to the entrance, and he went down that flight of stairs. It was carpeted, which I think helped, and he was just sitting at the bottom but fully conscious, and he didn't seem hurt really. I went after him but decided I needed to cool off and kept going outside. While I was outside I heard him start yelling again, and it was absolute rage yelling. I don't know how else to describe it, but it scared me. I remember there being a pile of construction waste on the sidewalk nearby with a piece of 2x4 maybe 2 feet long in it. I grabbed the wood, went back inside and overhand swung that with both hands right to his forehead. His eyes went really wide and he wobbled and fell back down. After that I actually don't remember what really happened or how I left. No police were called, and I know from what my mom told me that he went to the hospital and had a pretty bad concussion. He was still having problems with balance and nausea a couple weeks later. I can honestly say I was trying to kill him in that moment. It's one of the worst memories I have, and I 100% regret it to this day. I shouldn't have been in that position, and if I had to do it over again I would have called the police and sent them to my mom's place. There was no white knight BS, this wasn't justice or justified because it could have been avoided. My mom continued to see him for a while after, and I will never forgive her for putting me in that position. My intent was just to stop the guy from hurting someone, and I was scared by his raging after he went down those stairs, so I went all out. When my dad was 9, 1953, he had an abusive stepfather that was huge, like 6'4". He came home from the bar one night, beat up my granny, then passed out on the couch. My dad waited till everyone was asleep, then beat him with his baseball bat. He said he swung with all his might, just knew he killed him. The next morning the stepfather was at the table saying that must have been a hell of a bar fight. My dad was a little over 100 pounds as a man, so I'm sure he was tiny as a 9-yo. I never saw my dad drink a drop of alcohol, he couldn't stand being around people drinking. He never raised a hand to us either. All he had to say is he's disappointed in me, I would ball never do it again. He was everything his stepfather wasn't. I believe that's the greatest lesson you can learn from all the BS. When I was a teenager, I got into a bad car accident one night when a guy the first knew was trying to merge onto a road and didn't shoulder check. He was hit in his blind spot, and the other person in the front passenger seat who wasn't wearing a seatbelt went through the windshield and ended up on the hood of the car, unconscious. It was a sight and an experience that haunted me for years. I actually became scared of learning how to drive because of it. The guy who was driving had his insurance go up, but I am not sure if he felt bad about what happened. The other kid who ended up on the hood of the car had a bunch of busted bones, needed staples and stitches on his head, lost a bunch of teeth, broke a bunch of more bones in his face, and I'm pretty sure he developed CTE from it because his friends said he was never the same afterwards. This was nearly 20 years ago. I haven't seen either person in more than a decade. I've killed someone. I'm an doctor and had a patient come in nearly dead of chronic airways disease, short and needing to be put on a ventilator. Only problem was that he had what looked like a pneumothorax, collapsed lung. The treatment for this was drainage with a surgical tube through the chest wall. As it went in I felt something go wrong, it had penetrated through his lung. He didn't survive. My colleagues told me it's a recognized complication, 1 to 500, and he'd have died anyway, but some dude that worked for me at a restaurant I managed was an addict staying in a halfway house nearby in Texas. He's from Ohio, so good social circle was limited. The owner took him to a movie and dropped him off after at my place for a small get-together. We went to get beer, and far be it from to tell another man, especially since he was 5 years my senior, no. Plus his doc was oxy and said he was good with beer. Long story short, after he'd downed his six-pack he decided to down some of my clonazepam without my knowledge and went apeshit. Spat in my friend's mom's face, tried to drag my friend up the stairs to her bedroom, among other things. For whatever reason the thing that made me snap, very hard to get me there, was that he has stolen red wine and spilled it on the carpet. My best friend said my demeanor suddenly changed and I got a look in my eye that scared him. I walked outside to where the troublemaker was and beat him within an inch of his life, never did anything like that before. His jaw was broken, I could hear his teeth rattling around, he could barely stand. My best friend told him to leave and sent him packing. He got picked up by the police, ended up back in rehab, got hit by a car crossing the street and lost his leg. I felt terrible to begin with even though I knew he had it coming because I didn't feel like it was me at the wheel throughout the whole scenario. It was pretty much out of body. And seeing the aftermath once I was back in my body was absolutely terrifying. Then the guy loses his leg as an indirect result of that night, and to this day I can't help but think that someone should have just called the police. But I prided myself far too much on my ability to de-escalate, got in over my head, and now a man's life is ruined. Probably wasn't even his fault considering he was an addict and out of his mind on alcohol and bars. I served in the military, shot a guy before he shot me. I was able to render him aid when I realized he was a teenager. I'll never forget the look on his face or the smell of gunpowder and blood mixed in the air. The fucking look on his face when he took that last breath still keeps me up at night, and I've been out for over a decade. The first week I got my licenses at 17, I ran over a motorcyclist on the way home from the gym. It was a drizzly day, the kind of rain that makes the roads really slick. Anyways, I was approaching a red light in a major intersection on a bridge. I'm in the far left lane right before the left turn only lane. The motorcyclist is in front of me. The red light turns green so I start accelerating, only going maybe 30 to 35 atmospheres. Motorcyclist switches to the left turn only lane and starts to wobble. I'm already basically next to him by the time I recognize his wobbling. Time slowed down immensely as soon as I saw him wobble. I saw him fall off his bike and hit the ground. In that elongated moment of time I thought to myself, okay, if I would have ran over him I would have felt it by now. Boom. He went right under my back left tire and I ran right over his chest. I'm looking back in the side mirror and his helmet was off, but in that moment of hysteria mixed with the rain I thought I knocked his head off or something. I was freaking the fuck out. It was about 6:30 to 7 so traffic was pretty heavy and it was now at a standstill in this major intersection. I was in shock. I ran to the guy and there was a nurse and doctor already coming to help. The guy looked like a zombie, blood pouring out of him mouth, screaming and moaning in pain. Police came, handled the situation, but in the meantime his father was asking me, at 17, if his son was going to be okay and whatnot. I had no idea. They brought a helicopter down to get him, but his body was so messed up they couldn't adjust him to get in the position they needed to put him in the heli. They wound up putting him in a van and headed out. I asked the cop if he was going to be okay or alive, and the cop told me they couldn't tell me any information but I could try to go see him if I wanted. I was pretty confident I killed a man. I thought there was no way he survived that. About 3 years later I was looking through some documents in my apartment and came across the police report. Found the guy's name, googled it, turns out he was alive and got arrested at that time for driving without a license or something similar. It was such an immense relief to get closure on that, and no, I did not kill him. His insurance took the blame and the only thing I was left with was massive trauma, haha. 2 guys were holding me and other guy was punching me. I ended up bashing that guy to the point where they had to get him ambulance. We were like 13-yo or something, and yes, I do regret doing that because it was so inhuman from my side since I rushed at that guy like some kind of wild beast. Once in college I was at a girl's birthday party and some shady guys no one knew showed up. They were being cool so they were allowed to stay, till they weren't. So we told them all to leave. Suddenly we noticed birthday girl had gone missing. She sent a text to one of the other girls' help bathroom. All it said, one of the creepy guys had her in the bathroom and was raping her. She got one text out before he took her phone from her. People at the party just dialed 911. I kicked through the door. When I saw the state she was in I blacked out. When I came back to reality I was at the top of the stairs with a few of the other guys at the party pulling me back. I had thrown the rapist down a flight of cement stairs and took his wallet and phone from him. The sheriff showed up, asked who did it, and I told them flat out I think I did, and he just told me good job while the ambulance loaded the guy up. He ended up recovering, and during the court process and many interviews with detectives I found out he was trying to press charges on me, but the prosecuting attorney in the area where it happened would not let it happen. I got lucky, I guess, because I absolutely went overboard. I don't remember it, and I was sore as all could be for a couple weeks after. 10 out of 10 would do it all over again.